May 24, 1943. Mid-Atlantic, 02:17 hours. Kapitänleutnant Heinrich Bracht lifts the periscope by slow hydraulic increments. The Atlantic is black glass, windless, empty. His submarine U-6022 rests just beneath the surface, diesel engines silent, batteries whispering. He turns the grip. North quadrant. Nothing. East. A faint silhouette, perhaps a merchant hull against a thinning horizon. He lingers 1 second too long. The first depth charge detonates before he has time to lower the scope. The hull shudders. Gauges flicker. A second explosion lands closer, deliberate, measured, triangulated. Bracht stares at the periscope well as it retracts. No flares. No searchlights. No destroyer silhouette above. How did they know? For 3 years, the Atlantic had belonged to men like him. It was not a war of fleets. Not a contest of admirals standing on bridge decks. It was arithmetic and attrition. Tonnage sunk versus tonnage built. Bread, oil, ammunition, whether Britain could eat, fuel its bombers, and arm its soldiers depended entirely on the survival of cargo ships creeping across cold ocean lanes. The German U-boat arm understood this before anyone else did. Under the direction of Grand Admiral Karl Dronitz, wolfpacks fanned across shipping routes, waiting. Submarines operated as sentinels, one spotting, others converging by radio. At night they attacked on the surface, where they were faster than the merchant vessels they hunted. The periscope was only half the weapon. The real advantage was invisibility. In the mid-Atlantic, beyond land-based air cover there, existed what sailors called the Black Pit. A stretch of ocean so remote that convoys crossed it alone, protected only by their escorts. Aircraft could not reach that far. Radar struggled with the curvature of the sea and interference from waves. Darkness erased silhouettes. A submarine needed only to break the surface briefly to charge batteries, transmit coordinates, or observe. The Atlantic seemed infinite, and the periscope, a thin metallic stalk no wider than a wrist, was almost impossible to detect in open water. The physics favored the hunter. Early Allied radar operated at meter wavelengths. Long waves, spread wide, useful for detecting aircraft at altitude but clumsy against small objects near the sea surface. The ocean itself reflected signals unpredictably. Sea clutter blurred echoes into meaningless noise. A periscope head protruding perhaps a foot above water, practically invisible. Submarine commanders were trained to expose it for seconds only. Rotate. Scan. Withdraw. Surface at night. Attack from shadows. Submerge before dawn. It worked. Between 1940 and early 1943, German U-boats sank thousands of Allied ships. Entire convoys vanished. Britain's survival became a question measured in weeks of remaining food reserves. Yet something changed in the spring of 1943. The change was statistical before it was visible. In May alone, the Germans lost 41 submarines. 41. U-boat captains began reporting the same anomaly, aircraft appearing without warning in open ocean. No radar detector alerts. No visual contact until it was too late. Men who had mastered darkness were being struck inside it. The transformation began not at sea, but in laboratories lit by steady, indifferent bulbs. In 1940, British scientists had achieved something extraordinary: the refinement of the cavity magnetron. It was not elegant. It did not roar. It was a small copper block riddled with resonant cavities. But inside it, electrons spiraled in magnetic fields, generating high-power microwave radiation centimetric wavelengths. Shorter waves meant sharper vision. At 10-centimeter wavelengths, radar could discriminate smaller objects. Sea clutter diminished. Echoes sharpened. A conning tower was no longer lost in background noise. More importantly, this technology could be compact. Radar sets could now fit aboard aircraft. The British air-to-surface vessel radar ASV Mark III was born of this breakthrough. Unlike earlier systems, it did not announce itself in ways German detectors could recognize. U-boats carried Methodical receivers tuned to pick up longer wavelength Allied radar emissions. When Methodics crackled, submarines dived. But centimetric radar was silent to them. They did not know they were being illuminated. Picture the geometry. An RAF Coastal Command Liberator aircraft patrols at 3,000 feet. Its radar operator sweeps a dark scope inside the fuselage. The antenna beneath the aircraft emits pulses, microwaves racing outward at the speed of light. They strike the ocean surface and scatter. But when a metallic object interrupts that surface, a periscope, a conning tower, even the hull of a surfaced submarine, the reflection is distinct. A blip appears. Not large, not dramatic, but precise. Range determined by time delay. Bearing calculated by antenna orientation. The aircraft adjusts course silently. Below, a U-boat captain feels only wind and spray. He sees nothing in the sky. He trusts the horizon. Then, at perhaps half a mile distance, a brilliant arc of light ignites the night. The lee light. Mounted beneath the aircraft, this powerful searchlight remained off until the final seconds of approach. Radar guided the plane to its target invisibly. At close range, the light snapped on, blinding, sudden, inescapable. Depth charges followed. The combination was devastating. May 1943 became known among German submariners as Black May. Losses were no longer isolated. They were systemic. Aircraft ranged deep into the Atlantic, closing the Black Pit. Escort carriers extended coverage further. Radar-equipped destroyers coordinated with airborne patrols. High-frequency direction finding, Huff Duff, intercepted wolfpack communications and plotted positions. It was not one invention. It was a network. But at its core lay the magnetron's gift, centimetric radar that could see what the eye could not. The periscope was no longer subtle. It was reflective. U-boat commanders, conditioned to believe in their invisibility, experienced something worse than destruction: uncertainty. Methodical receivers remained silent, yet aircraft found them. Some German officers convinced themselves their radar detectors were somehow betraying them, emitting signals detectable by the British. Others suspected espionage. Equipment was dismantled and removed. It changed nothing. The threat was not being heard. It was being seen by physics beyond their instrumentation. The psychological inversion was profound. Submarine warfare depends on initiative. A U-boat chooses when to engage. It selects approach angles. It calculates torpedo solutions from concealed positions. Once that concealment is compromised, its tactical foundation erodes. Surfacing at night to recharge batteries, once routine, became perilous. The sea, which had offered anonymity, now seemed transparent. Captains shortened radio transmissions. They submerged earlier. They hesitated. Hesitation in submarine warfare is costly. Convoys, once defensive and anxious, sensed the shift. Escorts grew aggressive. Aircraft loitered with confidence. Statistics confirmed the feeling. Allied shipping losses declined sharply after May 1943. U-boat attrition reached unsustainable levels. Experienced crews disappeared faster than they could be replaced. Admiral Jernitz faced a brutal equation. For every merchant ship sunk, more submarines were being lost. He withdrew many U-boats from the North Atlantic. It was not surrender. It was recognition. The environment had changed. To understand the magnitude of that shift, consider the periscope itself. It was more than an optical instrument. It symbolized submarine power. A captain standing at the ocular lens was both observer and executioner. Through that narrow tube, he surveyed his domain, calculated distances, selected victims. The act of raising it was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Now each elevation risked detection by unseen radiation. A periscope head, perhaps 10 centimeters across, became a radar reflector. Its metallic housing betrayed its presence. Even a surfaced submarine's hull offered an unmistakable echo. The ocean's curvature no longer shielded. Microwaves bent perception. Warfare shifted from line of sight to line of signal, and signals travel farther than sight. Operationally, the British integration of technology was methodical. Coastal command crews trained to interpret subtle radar returns. Escort carriers deployed aircraft continuously, extending patrol zones. Destroyers equipped with improved radar-coordinated attacks, closing on contacts provided by aircraft. The process became almost mechanical. Radar contact at 20 miles. Course correction. Altitude adjustment. Visual confirmation unnecessary until final approach. Lee light activation at close range. Depth charges set for calculated depths. Submarines forced to crash dive under bombardment often lost control. Damage from near misses could rupture pressure hulls or disable ballast systems. Even when not destroyed outright, U-boats were harried, denied rest, denied opportunity. Exhaustion became another weapon. German engineers responded with innovation of their own. They introduced snorkels to allow diesel engines to run while submerged, reducing the need to surface. They developed new radar detectors tuned to shorter wavelengths. But adaptation lagged behind reality. By the time snorkels became widespread, Allied radar had further improved. The snorkel mast itself produced a detectable echo. There is a certain inevitability in technological races. Once the principle was established that electromagnetic waves could interrogate the sea surface with precision, the trajectory favored the Allies. Industrial capacity ensured mass production. Scientific collaboration accelerated refinement. The magnetron, born of necessity in a vulnerable island nation, had reshaped the Atlantic battlespace. Return to that night in May. U-602 shudders under concussive blasts. Bulkheads creak. A pipe ruptures. Water seeps. In the control room, men glance upward instinctively, as though the ocean itself has eyes. Bracht orders deeper. But he understands something now. They were found not because of error, not because of noise, not because of radio transmission. They were found because the sky had become a sensor. Above, an aircraft banks away after releasing its final depth charges. The radar operator marks the position. Oil slick soon surfaces. Debris. Another submarine erased from Jurnitz's ledger. The Periscope never reemerges. The broader consequence of this quiet revolution cannot be overstated, though it need not be dramatized. By securing Atlantic shipping lanes, the Allies ensured continuous delivery of American materiel to Britain. Food, fuel, tanks, aircraft components, an industrial artery uninterrupted. Without that artery, there is no sustained bombing campaign, no mass buildup in England, no June 1944 landings in Normandy. The defeat of the U-boat threat was not glamorous. It produced no single decisive naval battle. It was an accumulation of invisible victories, radar pulses bouncing off metal in darkness. The Atlantic did not erupt in spectacle. It gradually stabilized, and stability wins wars. There is something almost philosophical in the decline of the Periscope. For centuries, naval combat depended on what could be seen. Sails on the horizon, smoke from funnels, flash of gunfire. Submarines introduced concealment beneath water. Periscopes restored sight, selectively controlled, limited, tactical. But centimetric radar ended the primacy of optical warfare. The ocean became permeable to those who mastered electromagnetic spectrum. Visibility no longer depended on light, it depended on wavelength. Imagine again the calm Atlantic surface before dawn. A submarine, batteries low, rises cautiously. The Periscope ascends like a slender question mark against the sky. There is no moon. No escort in sight. The captain rotates the lens, believing himself alone. High above, unseen, a radar antenna sweeps. A pulse travels downward. Strikes metal. Returns. A small luminous blip forms on a screen inside a dark aircraft cabin. Coordinates are adjusted. Engines throttle quietly. The captain never hears the pulse that found him. The ocean did not change. Its depth remained cold and vast, its surface indifferent. What changed was who could see through it. And once the sea could be seen, the Periscope, once the submarine's greatest assurance, became a liability. In open water, it was no longer an eye, it was a signal.